This is Father Bonaventure Chapman.
And this is Father Jacob Bertrand Janczyk.
Welcome to Godsplaining. Thanks to all those who support us. If you enjoy the podcast, the show, please consider making a monthly donation on Patreon. Be sure to like and subscribe to Godsplaining wherever you listen to your podcasts. Father Jacob Bertrand, we're going to play a game.
Okay.
Okay, so
I don't know why I just committed so...
I'm going to, that's fine. Here we go. So I'm going to give you two options, and you're going to answer which one immediately you would rather have around you.
Okay.
Dog or cat?
Neither. Dog.
Okay, that's better. Fair. Scorpion or tarantula?
Tarantula.
Okay. Goldfish or clownfish?
Clownfish.
Okay. Why clownfish?
More exotic.
Oh, more exotic. Okay. What about the tarantula and the scorpion one?
I think it's like the shell, the exoskeleton of the scorpion that is more kind of revolting than like the hairy legs of a spider.
Yeah, that's probably right. That's
closer to like a mammal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do frog or turtle.
Turtle.
Ooh, why the turtle?
I don't like the feel of frogs.
Don't
like if you hold them.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
like
fair.
That. Yeah.
But okay, but holding turtles is good to go.
This sounds like super stupid, but it's not like slime. I don't like the kind of like moist skin.
No, I get that. I like a frog or toad. Toad's gonna be much better.
Yeah,
so yeah, frog. No, I don't. Yeah, and it's probably best not to hold that thing. All right, salamander or lizard.
Really neither on that one, but if I have to pick, I would say lizard.
Parakeet or parrot?
Parrot.
Ooh, now why the parrot?
Bigger.
Yeah, but a lot more responsibility too, right?
Yeah, man.
Okay, you're okay with that. All right, and final one, monkey or chia pet?
Chia pet.
Why?
A lot less responsibility.
There you go. So more responsibility with the parrot for the parakeet.
Well, it's like you have parakeet and parrot, and then you have like monkey and chia pet. Like there's a huge gap between monkey and chia pet. There's not. Comparatively, there's a much smaller gap between parakeet and parrot.
That's right. That's right. All right. So the question is, why are we talking about these things? Because we thought we'd talk about pets. Obviously, all of these things except for although the chia pet is a pet.
I mean, by name, it's
all of these things. Yeah, and monkeys. I don't think you ought to own a monkey as a pet. I mean, I'm sure some people might say yes, but generally, I think that ends with your face getting ripped off or something.
It's tough.
I mean, it's really, really hard, I suspect, to live with monkeys. But all the other ones are pets that one might have. And we thought we'd talk about owning pets, because it seems like there's a lot more, pets around. And there might be questions, people are a lot more dogs. People love dogs. Everyone loves dogs. No one doesn't like dogs, except some people. What did you answer on that one, by the way? Were you casting dogs?
I said neither, but then I said dogs. Okay,
that's right. Yeah. So definitely dogs. Okay, neither but dogs. And we might actually wonder, is it good to have pets? I mean, should we have pets? There's questions about this. So Pope Francis, for instance, sometimes says things, that are different. And he says at one point that choosing pets over children is selfish.
Indeed.
Which I think we would agree with. And then he says care for pets is like programmed love. I can program the loving response of a dog or a cat, and I don't need the experience of a human reciprocal love. So then he pits like love of pets versus love of humans to the detriment, and you could say it degrades. So you might, and we'll get more of the reasons, but first off, did you grow up with pets?
Kind of. So when I have a brother and a sister, younger both, as you know, but we had two dogs. Well, so my parents got two dogs when they were first married or moved into the house or whatever. They were larger. They were like, I think, German Shepherd Husky mixes or German Shepherd Retriever mixes, something like that.
Okay.
One died. I don't have a memory of one of them. She got hit by a car. They were from the same litter. They got them together. Unfortunately, got hit by a car. But the other I do remember. We probably had her until I was in like late elementary school, and then at that time she was kind of old and. We actually gave her to my neighbor who had another dog. We kind of shared, like our backyards were kind of contiguous, so the the dogs were outside a lot together. She was moving to Florida. The other dog was older, and we were just really rough on the dog. There were like 3 kids under the age of 10, and she was just too old. So she went with her to Florida.
Okay.
But that was young. And then we had like at one time we had like hermit crabs, but nothing
hermit
of
crabs.
any, like, I mean, yeah, basically like a single-celled organism compared to a dog, but nothing more than that. I think I might have had like a fish at one point, but
college fish perhaps.
I did, but it froze.
Oh. Yeah.
When I went home for Christmas break, we left the window open by mistake.
Oh, cryogenic experiment.
So I flushed the ice cube fish down the toilet.
Flush the ice. There it is. That's what you do with an ice cube fish. I remember when I remember reading about cryogenics when I was a wee lad and getting excited about the possibility of cryogenics. And so I remember we had this goldfish from a fair or something. You throw a little ping pong ball into a little goldfish bowl and you get a goldfish, and then your parents are like, oh no, more goldfish. Now we have a dirty tank of water around the house. And I remember freezing it and then like unfreezing it.
It didn't move after.
It kicked for a little bit. It was really exciting, and I was like, "Wow! Well, I bet the internal organs have all exploded in there
because
how water
crystals have ripped.
Yeah,
and
it expands. Water has weird properties when freezing. It gets
that's great. I'm sure it was really a lovely experience.
It did not. So you might think first moral mistakes there. But for a grave sin, you must have knowledge and this sort of stuff.
No, we're not judging.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
We're just observing.
We're just observing, exactly. It's descriptive, not normative accounts. Yeah, that's right.
But you had a lot of pets, though.
I did, I did. grew up. My mother was allergic to cats and dogs, so it's sort of opposite experience of you. Although I did have hermit crabs at some point. I grew up with about 138 animals. I think we had basically all the animals I described in the question, sort of thing. I was just like going through my Rolodex. Yeah, my room. I have a twin brother, and we shared a room together, and it had, I think, 20 or 30 tanks in it. So there were waterfalls at all times, and it looked like it was like an aquarium. And just taking care of that many animals, I mean, like cutting up brine shrimp because we had African clawed water frogs, and you cut up a giant slab of brine shrimp, these little things that are frozen, and it just grabs onto it and carries it around for a while. It's really gross, but. And then cleaning out the filters and cleaning the tanks, whatever. So it was a lot of animals. We had birds and also we had fish, birds, amphibians, reptiles, which are great, lizards on shoulders, all that. So I didn't grow up with a dog or a cat, but I grew up with all these other little furry friends.
All of that, I just want to say, none of that do I approve of.
Okay. That's great, and that's fine.
It's not a judgment. It's not a moral condemnation.
Yeah,
it's like
it's more personal,
not for me.
Personal preference. That's fine.
That would drive me nuts.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what about pets? Shall we say? So we've got the particular experience here, and then you might say, well, are water frogs the right thing to have, or a pet sort of thing? When you think about animals and the Christian life and having pets and this sort of thing. And you hear about people getting excited about having pets and dogs go to heaven, this sort of thing. Well, we'll get into that later. I'm sure there'll be fun in the comment box. But you can imagine there are objections too. So Pope Francis makes certain objections too. And again, he's not making particular, I don't think, strong condemnations of pets. And we want to make distinctions, of course. But you can imagine that there are, for instance, actually, I don't know if on the end of it whether people should have pets or not.
My thought on that?
Yeah, do you think people should have pets?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I think so.
But there might be reasons why not to have pets, right?
I think, but for personal preference, I don't think so.
Okay.
So my like whatever 5,000, 10,000 foot.
Yeah, let's take that and then water
summary,
down.
Yeah, is that pets are fine. So. I'll take an even further step back. For me, I'm indifferent towards pets. I don't dislike dogs, cats, the other animals that you mentioned. I probably have a stronger aversion to, not in the sense of
scorpions.
They're bad. Like I just don't want to be around them.
Yeah.
But like dogs, cats, fine. If people, I'm not particularly attached to them. So if like a dog comes up to me and is like a friendly, like happy to pet it, like hang out with it, that kind of thing. Happy, like if a cat's around, it's like cool, great. But for me, I don't get super attached. And I guess I've not owned like a dog of my own, so I've also not had that experience of like this is mine and I've cared for it. I've had it since it was a puppy, so I don't have that. So all that granted, pets, yeah, fine. I think, and I don't think that the criticism or criticisms against pets are against pets per se, but against our bizarre attachment to pets.
Oh, that's a good point.
So I think there's, pets good, but what is our relationship to them is what the more kind of, like, how are they incorporated into our families, if we want to say that, in our lives?
Yeah, okay. So maybe that's a good, so that there are a lot of choices in the moral life, and there's a sense, some people get a sense that there's always, there's the right choice and the wrong choice. This would be true for marriage, for instance. So you have people with a sense of, who am I supposed to marry? And it's this one person. Are you the right one for me? And actually, the correct view is there's plenty or none. But if you're to be married, you could be married to a bunch of people, and they could all be the right one. There's no specific one.
Well, you could be married to one person. You could choose from a
right. You could choose from a bunch of people, and you could be and maybe over time or something, within the laws of the church, of course. But there are plenty of options, you could say, and it's not trying to decide this is the only good choice, such that if I marry the wrong person, I've made the wrong choice. That is true, but marrying the wrong person isn't this individual, you could say, in that way. I think the moral life in general has this. There's some things that are flexible, and at least we've got a wide possibility, a wide sense of this. So perhaps thinking about, owning pets, for instance, isn't. We'll grant now, for instance, that owning pets isn't morally problematic per se.
No, not at all.
There might be some people who would say, yeah, maybe it's morally problematic because any money you give to a pet could be given to a person or something. But if you go down that route with the moral life, then you could live an austere existence such that, and Peter Singer recommends this sort of thing, that everything you do is pure good maximizing, and anything else is a failure in that regard.
Yeah.
And so you're literally not going to have anything except water and bread and some basic kind of, thing,
right.
Basically enough to sustain you through life, whatever that means. Let's assume that view's off the table.
Sure.
But then let's think about what considerations one should have when thinking about owning pets, or like what are the moral considerations involved in owning pets, would you say?
Yeah, I think as you were talking, I was thinking about a distinction that I want to make to table another part or another like avenue of this conversation, and that's like when we're talking about pets here, what I have in my mind, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I have in my mind are sort of like house pets, not like
chickens and ducks and things in the farm. These are
sort of thing.
We'll say domestic pets.
Right, great.
Yeah, domestic pets. That's right. Scorpions.
So what would I say okay, I think I'll get a lot of pushback on this from some listeners maybe, but I have a hard time. I don't think pets are family members.
Okay, yes.
Hot take.
Yeah.
I think they can be part of a family in as much as they live in a family household, but I think that we run into, if we play that out, I think this is where we can run into danger. Now, does that mean that we should not treat our pets well and they should get like veterinary care and well fed? And no, absolutely not. They should be. But when we talk about family, it's the same thing or a similar thing when on Father's Day, like I get wished Happy Father's Day. It's like, I'm not well-intentioned.
Yes.
It's great. It's very kind.
Yeah.
But I'm not a father, and I think it kind of it conflates the vocations. Like I actually gave up fatherhood, in my vocation. So actually the day of like the celebration of the priesthood is Holy Thursday. So if you want to wish like a priest a happy Father's Day, it should be Holy Thursday, not the secular holiday of Father's Day.
Yes.
So it's kind of in this world like that when we conflate like animals into family without any consideration of like, well, what are we doing here?
Right.
It sort of conflates that, like, and you see this sometimes where dogs or cats or whatever become like children or lumped into the same category as children. Or when you hear like parents talk about like my kids, and that includes their dogs, or like grandparents are buying like gifts for their grandchildren and their like grand puppies. That to me just seems we're getting into some dangerous territory of like, the good of the family and like the good of the heart, like what we're loving and how we're loving and sort of those kind of things. So
yes, I think there's a there's a drive to sentimentality is one, you could say, but two, I think you're right to say in a world where we're pretty vague on boundaries, not just interpersonal emotion, this kind of thing, but also like just conceptual boundaries about what is a man, what is a woman, what is a father, what is a mother. It's good to tighten those up a bit and be aware that they do carve at joints of reality, for instance, and that persons, human beings, persons, well, divine persons, angelic persons, but human persons we're talking about here. We're not keeping angels that I know of. I think they keep us. So human persons are not the same as animals.
Right.
Animals aren't persons. They're not persons. They're animals. We are animals, but persons. And it's easy today to slide into, because I think we don't think of humans as especially distinct, in a serious fashion. I mean, a real qualitative jump from other animals, because we've all been raised in sort of good evolutionary biology sense, and that's fine. You know, it turns out we came from whatever, totally fine. And yet we have a created soul, for instance. So our soul is created and it's immortal. Animals like scorpions, unlikely. I mean, it's possible, I suppose, that scorpions have souls that live forever or something. But seems pretty unlikely. I mean, how would you test that? I don't know. It just seems from philosophical reflection, it's probably not the case. So I'm not going to bat for scorpions. But as you wander up the chain and things kind of look and act and experience life in some fashion more like us, then we start to import and project and all of this onto them. And which is fine when you're a kid, and it's good to do these sort of things. Imagination is necessary, and I think there's a pedagogical function to it. But it becomes dangerous when we start to actually accept this and think, actually, the boundaries between our humans and our pets and our animals and that, as you mentioned, the household has now broken down. Well, it makes the pet a little bit too high on the ontological change, you could say. But two, it lowers the human. The danger in it is to forget the distinctive aspect nature of what it means to be a human person, and the moral values related to them.
Yeah, and I think with that doesn't mean, what I'm saying is not this, and I don't think you are either, that like animals ought to be loved. And I think that like they're part of like our human experience. They have been for like eons. Yeah. So great, get a pet, get a dog, get a cat, get a scorpion, get whatever you want.
Scorpion, yeah.
Yeah. But but the danger for me is or the potential danger is like, where do they sit within like the family unit? Because they are not equal to a child. And sometimes you look around and think, gosh, they're kind of treated as equal to a child. Yeah. In kind of bizarre ways, which is just strange to me. And this is why, like that what you mentioned at the top, that one of Pope Francis's comments about programming, like the love of an animal. Yes. It's easy to love a pet because this is why like dogs are man's best friend, because they're loyal to a fault and they're always there, and there's no engagement with another person. So I think there's something there to consider. It's like, well, why is it easy to love animals and harder to love humans? Yes.
Yes. Well, and this is so the quote at the start when Pope Francis, which it wasn't too long ago, and he said choosing pets over children is selfish, and people got outraged about this. And I remember there's even like animal chaplains who were saying this is an illegitimate understanding of animals. And I think if you're an animal chaplain, you have an illegitimate understanding of animals yourself. Really, obviously, much more than this, because I think you're right. The danger is, and I understand why people like dogs instead of, you see lots of people wandering around with dogs, and I don't want to say surrogate children, this sort of thing, that might be too strong a word, but I think sometimes that we need love, and we desire, all of us have a natural desire in a sense to be parents, to raise, to nurture something, women and men, men to direct and guide, and women to nurture and bring up, and animals do provide an opportunity for this. They are recipients of that training and that nurturing, that in a sense parenting, right? In an analogical fashion. Yeah. And they're pretty. I mean, if you get a pit bull or something, I know everyone's going, "Oh, my pit bull's great," but some of them require a lot of stiff hand, but none of them, I suspect, require as much of a stiff hand and the difficulties of raising an actual human child. Anyone who's real children are difficult to raise, much harder than dogs, I suspect. Now you might say, "Oh no, I would be shocked if there were more than, I don't know, 1 million people who said that children were easier to raise than dogs were easy to raise." Because, I mean, just over the time, if dogs are like If it's a big dog, you're talking like 12 years. Children, I mean, today, when does a
40 years?
Yeah, when does a college student grows up? When he's a guy is when it's like 35 when he's ready to leave the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm almost there. I'm 34, so I have one more year of living under my parents' roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're there.
Yeah.
You're there.
One of the things that I have encountered in kind of like weird ways, not myself, but like observing other people, is this sort of, you know, like you have a young couple, they may or may not be married, but living together in these sort of things, and they get a dog because they're like, you know, as a sort
fill
of
out
first
life
child.
Yes.
Like this is our first
try it
go at
out or
raising
something.
It's like, that is so strange to me. And it's so misplaced, because even though dogs, you know, a puppy's a pain in the butt to raise, granted, and it requires love and attention, granted, all those things, there's sort of an infinite leap between like raising a puppy and like raising your child. Even though you may have to get up in the middle of the night to let the puppy out, or it cries, and like just the required like what is required in these kind of things. And this is where that idea of like conflating the two seems to really miss the mark in my mind. Because pets are pets, and animals, as you said, animals are animals, and they're not a substitute or a kind of prereq to human beings. That's right. That's where I kind of get worried of like, okay, let's pump the brakes. Let's consider what these things are and why they are and why they aren't.
Right. I'm going to, and this might. So I love animals. I love pets and sort of thing, especially the small guys. We didn't grow up with dogs. I like dogs. Dogs are great.
Yeah.
But I'll give a story that may make some readers cringe. But my parents grew up with Doberman. My mother, I should say, grew up with Doberman pinschers in the house. And my grandfather, to train them to be with children, he would hold out a ball and give it to the dog. And then he would try to take it back. If the dog growled, he had a rolled up newspaper and he just whacked it across the nose.
Yeah.
And he would do this until the Doberman realized that whatever's in its mouth can be taken out. Why? Because there were children in the family, and the Doberman did not have rights over the children. And so the Doberman was at the service of these children. It was a member of the family in the pet sense. But that it did not, the Doberman's playing with that ball right now. You don't get to play with that ball right now. If the child grabs the ball and takes it out of the thing, and the Doberman does not have the right to growl. It doesn't have like equal rights, like, it was my turn with the ball. No, this was a dog. This was a pet. It was a beloved pet of the family.
And part of the family in that sense. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like, who cares? We didn't feed the dog, whatever. Like callousness sort of thing. No, it makes you, if you treat animals poorly, you are an immoral person, right? But it was not a member of the family with the same standing anywhere close. And but yet they loved, and there was no denigration of the dog. You could say that, and you might wonder, well, of course, but no, there's a distinction there. So we talked about the dangers. We could say, what about the positives? Is there any reason? So the reflections of why to get a pet or something that you can, this sort of thing. But any positives do you think are there for animals?
A lot. I think a whole host of positives, and depending kind of what you're getting the pet for, there are different like. I was going to say uses, or like different positives.
It's okay to say uses, I think, in some ways, right? This is not a...
not a human. That's right, but you can see my hesitation, right?
Yeah, I got you.
So one, like, that comes to, you mentioned Dobermans, like, these types of dogs tend to be sort of guard dogs, or like, protect the family. I think that's a perfectly fine reason to have an animal, to have a dog. Dogs, I don't really think of cats as like guard animals, or like if you released a bunch of scorpions, they might be guard animals.
It's hard to train them though.
That's right, but like the protection kind of thing, I think is a perfect reason. I think like the companionship that animals provide, whether it's for the elderly, you hear stories of, or that some, an elderly person's spouse has passed away, so they get a cat or a dog, something to keep them company, fill some space in the house, or even in nursing homes where they come in with like the animals to spend time with people, and that's great, that's awesome.
Yes.
I think with respect to families and children, it teaches responsibility and can certainly be part of the family in an appropriate way, and kind of you have this kind of Americana kind of image of you have the family and the dog, and like you go on walks like these, and like like I think all of those you just love the animal, like the type of animal, the breed of dog, the breed type of cat, this lizards, whatever. great. Do
Walking
it all.
lizards.
Walking lizards, do it all. I think all of those are, even just the simple enjoyment of animals, I think all of those are more than sufficient reasons to own pets. And I think in ways that they do bring a sense of joy in a real way to our lives. That animals, pets, they make us happy to have that companionship, to have that super qualified friendship with a pet. And
I think when I think, I'm a philosopher, so I think it's crazy thoughts sometimes, but I think animals can humanize us. They can make us more perfect as humans.
Yeah.
And also in the same way, animals and pets, we can aid them. So when on the humanizing aspect, we've talked about the dehumanizing aspect, such that by being projecting on animals and giving them a dignity that is not theirs degrades the dignity of what we have. So when you treat pets in the same exact category as children, and who knows if anyone does this, but as there's people that approach this sort of thing. But let's imagine just an ideal case when you don't make strong distinctions, or when everyone's talked to someone, I suspect, and they're talking about this they're using a name, and it was just so amazing what Johnny did the other day, and you're like, oh wow, what great is it? And it turns out you're talking about a dog, and this is that you should feel this weird. This is dehumanizing. This sort of thing. Like this person is, but I think it does. There's a humanizing aspect, not only in the development of children and responsibility. I mean, I grew up. You had tons of chores with these if you've got 138 animals, you've got to keep these things.
A lot of work, yeah.
And then, I mean, animals die. And so when you're a kid, like having to go through the experience of a bird burial ceremony and the correct usage of liturgical colors for that sort of occasion, and where to place eulogies not in the service, no mass for bird deaths, but I mean not in the service, but like eulogies are appropriate maybe afterwards or before. These are all good practice, so that when you have actual human death in the family, you don't have to have all the fights with it. It's best to fight over bird deaths. So that, and then just, I think there's something about the existential understanding of life ending. If you've had animals die and you've kind of started that dealing with that and understanding that grief, I suspect it makes it easier when when humans. So it warms you up in a way. It's like practicing, and also with as we talked about, they're easy to love. And the dogs especially love you. They reciprocate, and you could say again, it's kind of like jump-starting the emotions. Now you could just keep at the animal level, but you could also say it's actually pushing up towards giving us a more sensitive and nuanced emotional life. And I mean, if you bring someone's a callous person, for instance, and hates people and sort of thing, but they might have a dog, and the dog might help them, and they might think, oh, actually, yeah, I care and responsibility, and that might warm them up to other people. I mean, I know Hitler had a dog, and it didn't work in that case, but
not always the best example.
But it's good to have extremes sometimes. See that. I don't know if Stalin had animals. And then the other thing is, I think it's helpful to the animal too. This might be a stranger view, but we bring out capacities and things. So when you're with someone who is morally virtuous, and when you're around thinking of the saints, it's to draw you up and bring out things out of you. And I think pets, domestic animals, we have around, those who have actually had pets and spent a lot of time with them, I think you bring out the creational capacities of these things. You bring them to the edge. Roger Scruton says the edge of personhood. Not that they're persons, but that you've given them a fuller expression in some ways. There's also dangers in this, of course. And you might be actually hindering them from, if you cut off the bird's wings and give it the full expression of it walking around, but it's not being a bird.
Yeah.
But I think even the best case, dogs running on their own in the wild, not that interesting. But a dog devoted to a human, I think it's a better dog.
Could be. I haven't thought about that.
So you're actually helping the animal in that.
Yeah. One of the things too that I'm thinking about is also, you can see whether it's like people's attachment to animals attachment to people, however that is like actually defined, but sort of that whole like complexus of relationship there. I think also brings forth the sort of complexus in relation of creation as a whole, human beings aren't created to live in a world that is divorced from like relationship with other things in creation.
Yeah.
And this is where, like, you know, we have dominion over creation, but not dominion to like dominate, but dominion to help move creation towards a flourishing. Yeah, and I think here of kind of what you're saying, that like it's good to have, I think we do well, creation as a whole in our place, and it does well to have healthy relationships within creation. And obviously, like, my relationship to a rock versus like a golden retriever is going to be very different.
Yes.
And it should be. And my relationship to human beings and a golden retriever ought to be very different. And with, just to be clear, with a human and a rock also, even if I have a pet rock, ought to be very different. But you can see there's kind of a beauty in the nexus and the interconnections of creation even at different levels. In this flourishing that happens when it is working well.
No, I think that's right. That in creation is set up. Well, all of here we see around us is creation. All of it is given by God. All of it has a goodness to it, and all of it is supposed to be related in some fashion. And that fashion, well, the relationship between God and creatures is one of love and care and attention, and we are vice regents in that. So our relationship to creation is one of love as well.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we don't eat some of them. But
also true,
you know, but that's for a different discussion entirely. We're just talking about caring for your pets, and I think everyone can whether you eat meat or not, I think everyone's on the same page basically that you ought not eat your pet unless it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, even then I don't know if everyone would.
Yeah, I guess. Well, that's true. If it's a point where it's either you eat your pet or you die. That might be a nice test case, although this is a horrible way to end the episode.
Please don't. Please don't.
Yeah, of how if you have a right relationship to your pets. But we talked about in this episode. We talked about the good parts about pets, and
I think they're great. That's my bottom line. Get your pets, love them appropriately and well.
Yes.
Amen.
That's
me.
That's just a general. Go your thoughts, and your thoughts are victorious. So, so thanks as always for listening to Godsplaining. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Like the episode, subscribe on YouTube or podcast app. Leave a 5-star review. If you'd like to donate to the podcast through Patreon, follow the link in the description of the show notes. In there, you'll also find links to shop our merchandise and perhaps our new line of pets. There might be some links to places where you can get scorpions and lizards and other things to practice your love and to raise them up to the dignity that God wants them to have. Follow the link in the description for all that stuff. Also, you can get some information about upcoming Godsplaining events in person. Know of our prayers for you. Please pray for us, and we'll catch you next time on Godsplaining.